Sakurai's second stab at a Kirby game is here, and it comes 22 years after the kind of 2003 GameCube original. Now we've got this Switch 2 sequel, but does this comeback kind of actually stick the landing? The first game was something of a mixed bag critically, but it is one of those games that kind of like came to find its fans over the years. So I guess this time around it's kind of a question of whether this new one is actually more approachable and whether it will actually find more of a kind of like sizable, agreeable audience in 2025. Now, Sakurai spent the best part of like a feature-length movie explaining everything that this game has to offer in a rather indulgent double bill direct ahead of its release. That kind of along with the demo available prior to launch means that anyone who kind of has like an active interest in what this game is all about has had plenty of information available to them. But for everyone else, there's the reviews. And I've read through a bunch of these kind of early reviews, and I want to kind of bring you some of the highlights of what they're saying, sharing kind of any interesting tidbits along with the kind of broad overview of what the pros and cons are of what we can kind of expect from this vehicular action racer. So let's get into it. Alright, so from the offset, Kirby Air Ride and now Riders has always seemed a little experimental, right? It's not your typical kart racer. It controls differently. It kind of introduces novel ways to approach play, and I guess it can kind of seem a little bit chaotic to a mere observer. All of this taken together potentially kind of puts it in something of a niche box when compared to the likes of Mario Kart World and other kind of more traditional kart racers. However, I think the fact that this game is actually here, in the first year of the Switch 2, mere months after the behemoth that is Mario Kart World, only speaks to the kind of strength of confidence that Nintendo likely has in this project. And I mean, it's a Sakurai game after all, so it kind of makes sense. It's clearly different though, and it's different enough to kind of enter the lineup of Switch 2 titles this early on, despite Mario Kart World being right there. I guess I'm trying to say like Kirby Air Riders is very much like the yin to the yang of Mario Kart World. It's different enough to stand on its own. So do the reviews reflect that? Well, I guess the big takeaway from me from reading them is that this game is weird, but in the best possible way. It's not just a racing game. It has that, sure, but it kind of adds in like certain mechanics and a level of overall chaos and yet still comes away working. It's obvious from these reviews that it's not going to be a game that's as instantly pick up and play as like a Mario Kart, and there is a learning curve here with Kirby Air Riders, and the kind of various modes that are on offer have the potential to kind of overwhelm new players, but on the whole, it's clearly a game that's packed with stuff to do. So if you are up for something fresh, fast, and I guess a little unhinged, then this might well be worth a look. Jenny Larder at Silicon Era loved Kirby Air Riders, and she came away with a strong preference for it over Mario Kart World from earlier in the year. She said, "There's room for both races on the Switch too, of course, but if I had to pick a favourite and never touch the other game again, I'd pick Kirby Air Riders every time." Hayes Madsen, writing it in verse, praised the depth on offer within Air Riders, something that's not always like a guarantee with a racer. He highlights how the game has a clear identity and a confidence in its vision, delivering a racing game that's kind of intense, has plenty of depth, is complex in places, but is undeniably engrossing. Like others, he mentions how the initial learning curve can be a bit steep and overwhelming, resulting in a title lacking that kind of same pick-up-and-play quality that Mario Kart offers. But on the whole though, he's found Sakurai's latest offering to be a refreshing change. And although Kirby Air Riders is absolutely not going to be a game for everyone, it doesn't want to be, and that's okay. Oliver Brandt at Vooks found Air Riders to be a chaotic yet compelling offering, calling it a fascinating game that walks the line between being a unfocused mess and one of the most enjoyable on the Switch 2. For better and for worse, it's a true successor to the GameCube's Air Ride, taking everything that people loved and hated about that game and ramping it up to 11. Next, I want to touch on this kind of like somewhat odd review from the Metro. It landed on a harshly critical take of the game, with like an overall skepticism to the actual core game design, and even kind of questioning the justification for revisiting this concept like 20 years on after from the original. The Metro review, which curiously doesn't have a byline, kind of praised the visuals and soundtrack of Kirby Air Riders, but was otherwise just down on this quasi-remake of one of the GameCube's worst games. Their words, not mine. It's a review which argues that the fundamental gameplay on offer is overly confusing and outdating, calling it the most baffling Nintendo release of recent years. It's clear to say they weren't a fan. Moving on, Logan Plant at IGN had a much more glowing take, noting it represents a significant leap forward from its GameCube predecessor. Kirby Air Riders is totally bizarre. and I love it for that. Logan praises its originality, depth, and sheer volume of content. Yeah, he goes on to kind of acknowledge the game's quirks and limitations, but finds them more endearing rather than deal-breaking. Overall, IGN's piece seems to embrace the weirdness of what's on offer, noting that Sakurai's distinct flair is fully intact here, and that Air Riders is ultimately undeniably well made, with a high baseline of quality that's always present. By the way, a quick aside, like all of the reviews that I've mentioned in today's video are linked in the description below, so please do go and check them out for a deeper dive. Jordan Biordi at CG Magazine calls Air Riders a must play, noting that it combines tight controls, excellent gameplay, and a plethora of content to make it the best mascot racing game on the Nintendo Switch 2. The best. Take that, Mario Kart. Sam Corley, writing for Gaming Bible, came away impressed. They highlighted the unique gameplay feel here, describing it as fast and hectic with a surprising amount of fighting game DNA, which maybe shouldn't be a surprise, kind of given Sakurai's history. Sam found the game challenging, noting how skill is much more of a requirement here compared to the likes of Mario Kart, where you've got like rubber banding and such. The game won't drop a handy little item onto your lap to get you back into the race. You'll need all of your skill, will, and determination. The Gaming Bible review was a little disappointed in the lack of track selection, noting that what we have here is quality, but the quantity may actually leave racers wanting more. On the whole, Kirby Air Riders is something that Sam thinks will keep you entertained for hours on end, adding that its easy to learn but difficult to master gameplay loop will leave you desperate to improve. He concludes by saying, "I'll be damned if this isn't the best racing game released this year." Finally, Chris Scullion at VGC said that despite an insultingly simple control scheme, Air Riders is a surprisingly strong and deep racer. He highlights how the road trip mode in particular is the standout for solo players, offering hours and hours worth of challenges to tackle outside of the usual racing. I think he said there's like 30 to 40 hours of content alone within this kind of solo mode. The vehicles were also praised as being truly unique, again making a Mario Kart comparison. There was a lot of them saying that whereas Mario and pals race on a bunch of different karts, they ultimately end up feeling mostly the same, whereas with Air Riders machines they are all wildly different, with many boasting unique abilities. Chris concludes by calling this release a pleasant surprise that, although has some rather eccentric design choices, is ultimately a great little racing game with engaging and replay-friendly solo modes. Alright, so that's your roundup of the reviews so far. The game is currently sitting at around a 78 at time of recording over on Metacritic, with the consensus kind of being that this new Sakurai racer is bold, chaotic, maybe a little hard to kind of get into, but is on the whole bursting with unique charm. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan on grabbing this one. Go faster than Rick and hit that subscribe button for more just like this. And if you want to keep tabs on all the upcoming Switch 2 releases, then I share a list of all upcoming games in my free weekly newsletter, Hanafuda Report. There's a link in the description where you can sign up. Okay, that's all from me. Ciao!